because you're worth hearing.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Okay, good, because we're live and we're actually on the air, and you're being shown right now.
Oh, perfect. Sounds good. Hello, everyone.
This is Phil. I run the show tonight. Do it. All right. Well, welcome to the show, everybody. This is the Daytripper Photo Show. This is a big one. This is episode number 180. We're going to get to 200 episodes soon.
It's awesome.
That's pretty cool. I've got big things planned for the 200th episode.
That's good.
I don't. I'm just going to think of something. But it'll be fun nonetheless. What's that?
You had me convinced.
Oh.
It's exciting. Like, I want to hear these plans.
Oh, yes. You will know. You will know. All right. Well, tonight is a tips and techniques show. As some of you may know, this show kind of has three separate shows, I guess you could say. We have one show, which is our photo review show, where we review everybody's photos for the 3-week photo challenge, and we issue the new challenge. And the current challenge is, do you remember?
Fireworks.
Fireworks. Lots of people are posting fireworks, but still not seeing what I was really hoping for. Well, I'll talk about that later. Another show is the banter show, where we kind of give ourselves permission to chat on and random conversation about things that are current and happening in the photography world. I love the banter show. What do you think?
I like it. It's a lot of fun.
We get to just kind of banter. I guess that's why we call it the banter show. It makes sense. Yeah. And then, of course, we have shows like tonight where we're doing our tips and techniques show, where we're really hoping to deliver on knowledge. We want to give you guys, as our buddy Nick would say, knowledge. Love Nick. All right. So that's what we're doing tonight. The knowledge we're trying to convey is file formats. There's lots of them. All kinds of different file formats.
Yep.
Now, we were talking about this. Phil and I were talking a few minutes ago about the process, because there's not just how you shoot. Because how you shoot, what do we have? JPEG and RAW for the most part, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Some of them are, TIFF. I think there's still a few cameras that shoot TIFF in camera. There's still a few cameras that give you the options of doing lots of different things. Like, for example, Pentax is PEF format. Canon is CR2 RAW. Nikon is NEF RAW. So just because they shoot RAW doesn't mean RAW is the same. And we're going to talk about all these things tonight and where they're all used and what they all are. JPEG, RAW, TIFF, PNG, GIF. There's all kinds of different file formats. So that's the point of tonight's show, is to give knowledge on WTF. What are these things? So before we started, I asked Phil, I said, Phil, do you know much about this stuff? And what'd you say?
I think so.
Yeah. I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be fine. Before we get into it, I do want to mention something. This is kind of the Andrew Tomlinson teaser part of the show. Andrew is our resident Pentax shooter, and I love it because I really like Pentax. It's just you can't find it anywhere, right? So hard to find Pentax product in stores. A week ago or so, I was working in the Toronto Henry's store down at Queen and Church, their flagship store. It was a lot of fun. First time I'd ever worked at a different Henry's location. And of course, it's like the biggest, oldest Henry's store in the chain. And they have everything. They had the Nikon D5. They had all these really cool cameras. They had that new the Olympus. Looks like a GoPro camera, okay. Olympus with 200-degree viewing angle. And just, it's so cool. But they also had the Pentax K1, the full-frame Pentax DSLR, the first one. So I'm super excited about this thing. And because Andrew is, our Pentax shooter, I sent him a photo of it sitting on the shelf, and I was all impressed. I didn't get to play with it, but I was pretty impressed by it. So yesterday at the store at Henry's in Newmarket, Martin and I were talking, and Martin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Martin's a good buddy of ours. We were chatting about the Pentax K1 review that was just out. And he was going on about how the focusing wasn't that great, and there were all these weird little things that they said were kind of negatives about it. And then there were all these things that were positives about it. Now, I was just reading up about it. And one of the sentences I found, one of the paragraphs, I should say, I found on the DP review for this thing, the other sensor shift modes are also clever. Now, listen to this, Phil. The K1 includes horizon correction, which rotates the sensor if you hold the camera slightly off level.
Interesting.
So the sensor is like a free-floating sensor in this camera. It gives you 5 stops of stabilization because of this, which is insane. I don't know. Most lenses don't even go to 5 stops of stabilization built in. So the sensor, because it shifts around and moves, they can do that. It also has, now this is the cool thing, the Astro Tracer system that uses the sensor's movement to cancel out the effect of the Earth's rotation when making images of stars. It uses calculations using GPS to do it. So it's basically like having an equatorial mount on your tripod so that you can track the star movement and you can get better star trail photos. How cool is that, dude?
It's really cool. I'd like to know a bit more about it, like how long it can take a picture before that won't work. Like the Pentax way of image stabilization, that moving sensor is something that is a really different thing. I remember when the first Pentax came out with the image stabilization in it, and I was actually at the second or third Henry's show that I went to, like when they had the big one down in Toronto.
The exposure show.
Exposure show, thank you.
Yeah.
Digital.
Easy for you to say. Holy cow.
Digital video and imaging show or whatever. The original was like it was called.
Yep.
And I remember the Pentax guys were there, and they were showing how to clean a Pentax sensor, and you had to like lock it in place, or else it would just kind of like squish out of the way. Like it's a really interesting system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because Sony used to do that, and I think Sony's now all in lens now. So I think they're the last people to use a moving sensor for image stabilization. It's
really cool. There's a lot of different benefits to it, but I just wanted to quickly mention that when I read the Astro Tracker, I was like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Astro Tracer.
Especially if it can help work out, a little bit of motion, because the problem with any picture, about 30 seconds or so, depending on the size of lens you're using, but about 30 seconds, you'll start to see star motion.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can make that not happen, it makes astrophotography a heck of a lot easier and a whole lot cheaper.
Well, you can do much longer exposures without the trail of the star.
Yeah.
And that gives you the ability to have more stars in the photo.
Yeah.
It gets deeper into space, so you can actually see maybe nebulas and galaxies and stuff like that.
You got a big enough lens.
Yeah. Super cool.
You don't spend like $800 on a tripod head.
And the best part, though, Phil, I mean, the camera is $2,500 retail for a Pentax full frame.
Which is pretty good.
Considering, if you compare that to the Canon, or the Nikons, you're paying $2,600, $3,000, $4,000. The Sony A7Rs are like $3,500, $4,000. So good value. I'm really excited. I honestly think that if I wasn't invested in Nikon as I am, I'd switch over to a Pentax. Get a K5 as a crop sensor and get the K1 as a full frame. Ah, come on, this is so cool. Anyway, just want to remind folks, or give you a heads up, I should say, there's a spot that's opened up for the sold-out Don Komarechka masterclass session for this Sunday. I guess it's not technically sold out anymore. There's one spot remaining. So if anybody was hoping to get in on this exclusive opportunity, register now. Go to www.daytripperphoto.com and register for that one spot that's still available. The session's only $300. It's an 8-hour session. We're there from like 9:30 till 5:30 p.m. There's lunch with pizza and everything in between. Don's giving away third arm. I've got all the Sigma lenses coming. We have the best opportunity to learn. I'll be there to help teach. Don will be there to help teach. And the Loft Studios intern, Misha, will also be there. So there's all kinds of really cool things that make this a very unique Don Komarechka class. And I really encourage anybody who's interested, who wants to get macro, water droplet refraction, editing techniques, all kinds of really great benefits. Go over to daytripperphoto.com, take up that last spot, and we'll see you on Sunday. All right. And before we get into the show, I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't already, please go over to the Google Plus communities and join the Daytripper Photo community. It's a lot of fun. One of the things I've noticed is that when folks first join, they don't really know everything that we offer for free. Like, I mean, the only thing you have to pay for in our community is if you register for a day trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get help 24/7. You get encouragement. There's a no idiot rule. So if there's people in there and they're acting like idiots, then they get the boot. I'm not going to say we censor everything, but we definitely moderate. We want to make sure that it's an environment where people are getting creative, constructive help rather than ego attitude, which generally can really come up in the world of photography. Do you know anybody in the world of photography that is like Mr. Ego?
I think I know a couple people.
Okay, don't name them. That's another show.
Okay.
But check out the Daytripper
after show.
It's the after show. Yes. That's not recorded. No. Yes, it is. All right. And also, I want to remind folks that if you are watching this on YouTube, please click like Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tell the world that you actually enjoy what we do. Tell us that you enjoy what we do. We have a great time doing the show, and to hear from you guys would be really helpful. Let us know we're on the right track, so to speak. Yeah. And also, if you're watching live, join the Q&A. Let us know what you're talking about. Let us know what you're thinking. Some of you have already done that. Jason, Ron, Sheila, hello to you. Thank you for watching tonight. And I hope you guys watch for the whole show, because there's some really cool stuff we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And actually, almost there. Almost there. Have to thank our good friends over at LensPen. Always have to thank our good friends at LensPen. You know, it's funny. You mentioned last time we were on the show how they retweeted or they commented on something.
Yeah, they posted a video of you.
That's right.
Stuff.
Yeah, so I was doing a little video on LensPen, sensor cleaning, and LensPen reshared it. I love these guys. They are so on top of their social media. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're on top of your social media and you pay attention to what people are saying, that means that you actually give a beep and want to actually do something for people. So if you guys ever have any questions about LensPen on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever, LensPen Group is their hashtag, or is their at name. LensPen Group, LensPen. Check them out. Talk to them. Tell them if there's a product that you have in mind you think that would be cool. I can't think of any way to improve what they've already got, but you never know. You never know. Keep in touch. Use social media. Get in touch with LensPen. I know it works for me. And Sennheiser for helping us out. The rep, Justin, was on our show, did that whole episode on microphones, which I learned a ton about. Love their headphones, always have. I mean, come on, we all know Sennheiser's great product. I'm so happy that these companies that we reach out to for help here and there actually like helping a little show like ours. So thank you, Sennheiser. Thank you, LensPen. And of course, thank you to Cotton Carrier. They were our first sponsor way back when we first started. They've helped me out personally with the gear so I can carry my camera. I wear that thing every day at work. I mean, I was walking around the Henry's downtown store with my Nikon D7100 and a 50mm lens, actually a 10-24 at times, on a Cotton Carrier hip holster the entire time I'm working. Behind the counter, moving around. I got my camera on my hip. Of course, Joseph sees this. He's like, "You have your wide-angle lens. Take pictures of me. Take pictures of me." I'm like, "All right, fine, Joseph." It was fun.
They need to buy a new lens because that one broke.
Yeah, right. Oh, he's not that bad looking. He's like the Persian George Clooney. Joseph was awesome. So yeah, thank you so much to our sponsors. And you know what? Let's get into this. We've been chatting long enough. What do you think?
Absolutely. Let's take a look.
Let's do it. So Phil, it's not just raw and JPEG, although that's all everybody seems to talk about.
Well, it is the kind of big ones that, you know, everyone who has a YouTube video or has a book wants to jump up and down and say you have to shoot one, not the other. But that's shooting. What happens after you shoot? What happens if you own a Mantax? And there's a third option. You know, what are you doing? What do you want? What's best? What's good? What do you want to do?
What's the differences?
Exactly.
Why are they so freaking many different styles?
Partly, I would say, because of companies.
Money.
And money, that's the other thing, too.
Money is what it comes down to. In fact, in the research that I was doing, I actually learned something really cool. Now, I'm just going to go down a list of different file formats so that you all know what I'm talking about here. There's JPEG, there's RAW, there's DNG, there's PSD, there's GIF, or GIF, some people call it. They're wrong. There's PNG, which is apparently called PNG. It's not PNG, Phil. Stop calling it that.
PNG.
And there's bitmap. There's all kinds of different kinds of file formats. Now, each one has its own benefits, and each one was invented by somebody else. So what I found out with the whole PNG format, the reason PNG was invented was because it's an open source format. Originally, when GIF was invented, a company named Unisys Corporation, 1985, invented their compression technology. It's called LZW compression. So this company, Unisys, invented the compression format of a GIF file. So now everybody who uses software that's compatible with GIF has to pay royalties to Unisys Corporation because they have the patent. So you've got this company sitting back and raking in all the money because everybody has to use their format. So finally somebody said, no, let's not do this. Let's create an open source format where you don't have to pay the royalties. And that's where PNG came in. So they're trying to phase out GIF and replace it with PNG. I don't know. What do you think of that? It's kind of cool.
It is. It's always interesting to see what happens when, you know, a company wants to try and make money off of something that's more or less proprietary. When they created the compression, but at the same time, and this is what happens with digital product, especially a file format. At what point do you no longer own that format, and is it just used? It's kind of like when a brand starts to represent everything. Like Kleenex represents any type of soft tissue you blow your nose into. It's become just a word. And so I know with software you have to have certain things that run other things, but at the same time, it's something that becomes so used. It would be like the group that created the JPEG being like, every time someone uses a JPEG, they have to pay us 5 cents.
Right.
It would be lunacy.
Well, can you imagine every time you take a picture with your cell phone camera? Oh, 5 cents.
Yep. It'd be crazy.
But it wouldn't be that. It would be more the manufacturer would have to buy the rights. So it would be like Sony would have to pay the company that invented that file format the rights to do it or something. But nonetheless, it's kind of, it all kind of circles around that. But what is an image? I mean, an image is a bunch of different digital pieces that gets put into something that you can view.
Assortment of pixels.
Assortment of pixels, right. And there's different ways of taking these pixels and making them bigger and making them smaller and making them workable with different computer languages. Like we all know, every time there's a computer update, a new operating system, that operating system has its own built-in defense mechanism so that you have to use their stuff. Is that right? Am I saying that right? Sort
of. It's just, in order to make things more streamlined, older technology will get left out.
Right.
So if you have, a brand new Windows 10 computer, chances are a piece of software used, 15, 20 years ago on Windows, ME or 95 or whatever was out at the time, 15 years ago, ME 20, Windows 95, it's not going to work, because if we tried to carry this forward on every iteration, you would end up with this big bloated thing that would almost be like, a Vista or a 7 or 8.
Oh man, yeah, they weren't good. But when it comes to file formats, we capture it in one format.
Yep.
We edit it.
Yep.
And then we have a choice.
Yes.
What do we do with that at that point? So most of us will take a picture in JPEG. If you don't edit it, the camera already did that for you. That's what a JPEG is.
Yep.
A JPEG is Phil, you mentioned earlier the group that invented JPEG. It's called Joint Photographic Experts Group, JPEG. It's a compressed image. Basically, if you look at binary code, which is what RAW is, by the way. RAW is 100% of your camera's digital binary code. No loss. Everything that your camera sensor captures, that's on a RAW. But if that file is too big and you don't want to work to edit every single picture because you have to edit RAW, you have no choice. Right, Phil?
Yep.
When you shoot RAW, you have to edit it. If you don't, nothing else will read it. So you shoot your RAW image, but you have to then compress it. And compressing it means, if you look at your binary code, every third bit is pulled out of the code, thrown into the garbage, and the camera itself, or your editing technique, mixes the colors to form the final image. That's a pretty basic explanation, don't you think?
I think so.
I'm trying to keep this straightforward because I get confused with all these stupid things. So I always shoot in RAW. What do you shoot in?
It depends. If I'm shooting for myself or other people, chances are I'm going to shoot RAW. But there are times that a JPEG will work. Like if I'm going out and it's a family event, and they want pictures of whatever's happening, and I honestly don't want to come home and sit there and edit 40 or 50 pictures of whatever's happening and dogs running through the backyard and that kind of stuff. I'll shoot it on JPEG. That way I can get the pictures that everyone will want, dump those up on something like Dropbox, share those immediately, yet there's still enough information to take the couple group shots and make them look like how I want.
Yeah, you can still do quite a bit with a JPEG.
Exactly. And it just depends on how much effort I want to put in afterwards. Now, that's not to say that, I'll do that all the time. It just depends on what I'm shooting. It depends on how I'm working with the pictures. Most of the time, I would say if I'm shooting for myself, I more or less are going to edit every picture I want to keep anyway. And that will get me into shooting on the RAW side.
Now, for myself, I agree with you. And we've talked with a bunch of different people. And Darren Gahan used to be a host on the show. And he talks about how positive JPEG can be because he does real estate photography where he's stitching 360-degree real estate panoramics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all good and well in the world. But if you do a raw image, unless you have NASA's computer processing power, you're not going to actually be able to do anything with your life. You'll be sitting there editing all the time.
Yeah.
So he shoots JPEG to keep the file sizes down and to keep the editing much quicker. Our buddy Bryan Weiss does sports photographer, Ontario Junior Hockey League photographer. He has 10 minutes to cull through 300 photos of a period and upload those photos to their, I think it used to be Getty and I think it's something else now. But he has to upload 10 of the best pictures. He doesn't have more than 10 minutes to go through and do this. So he's going to shoot JPEG, do the quick touch-ups, and ship them off.
Mm-hmm.
You just get your settings right in camera. JPEG's fine.
Exactly. And that's, I think, a big thing that we need to also take a look at quickly. And that is, if you are getting everything set up and everything's done properly in field, the amount of work you're doing on a RAW or the amount of work you're doing on a JPEG isn't that much. So as long as you're getting the right settings and the right picture in field, you're not doing a ton of editing afterwards anyway. It does at the end of the day matter, but for the most part, you're okay really being in either. And you got to shoot in what works best for you. And you're going to get videos of people jumping up and down saying you have to shoot on RAW. It's the only thing to do because that's what I do. It's not necessarily correct. It depends on what you're doing with your pictures.
Absolutely. As an example of this, I shoot a lot of different things. One of the things I shoot is professional wrestling. And this is a portrait I did recently. Now, if you look at this picture, you think, oh, geez, that's horrible. Right? You could say it, Phil.
Yeah, it's got weird wall there. Lighting's kind of funky.
Yeah, it's not good at all because I'm shooting in an electrical room. And I have about a minute to get the wrestler in, get the couple photos, and shove them off so he can go. I shouldn't say that. They have to go wrestle. So as soon as they're done with me, they're heading out into the ring to do their thing. They don't have a lot of time. So we got to get it done. We got to get it quick. And sometimes when you have one wrestler that is 5'10" and another wrestler that's 6'8", you don't have the lighting set properly.
Mm-hmm.
So if you shoot RAW, you can go from this to this without much loss.
Mm-hmm.
With a clean result and with all of that information to work with, that gives you then the ability to start getting into editing of the details out, like the sweat stain that was on his jacket, or bringing it into silver effects and giving it all the different kind of layers that you want to give it, or the color and tone. But the funny thing is, this is where we leave RAW. And this is what we're going to get into. So I shot this originally in RAW. I brought this into Lightroom to do my edit. When I'm done my edit, I then wanted to make it this tone of black and white.
Mm-hmm.
So I use the software Nik. I use Silver Effects. Okay, so I bring this from Lightroom into Silver Effects. And as soon as I do that, it creates a copy of the photo as a TIFF. So now this image is no longer RAW. It's a lossless file called TIFF. Now, what do you know about TIFF?
Well, TIFF is a more or less universal format. It is something that is used by some camera manufacturers as well as some software as a way of creating a picture that is more easily understood, but without the compression or the squishing that you get out of a JPEG image.
There you go. So it's uncompressed.
Mm-hmm.
It retains the maximum amount of image data from the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good way to save that image after the fact. It can be compressed if you want to. You can zip it. There's compressing software called Zip. So without any loss of image data at all. You can also save it as a JPEG. So if you want to make it more universally known, that from Lightroom as a TIFF file, which it is right now, and I'll show you one more time here. How do I know it's a TIFF? Because right up here in the info, can you see the header, the titles?
No.
I think I'm sharing the wrong screen to do that. Let me try this. Is that better?
It's still, there it is. Yes.
Hang on a second. Let me get out of this window of death. I got to just move that over there. Yeah. There we go.
Edit, TIFF.
Okay. So now you can see that edit TIFF.
You know, you're working
what do
on
you-
a picture when it's like DS593, edit, edit, edit.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
that's the thing. There's the original NEF raw file.
Yeah.
Okay. And from there, I went and I got rid of the sweat stains on his jacket or on his front. Because that, I'm sure he doesn't like the world knowing he's got sweat stains and funny lumps down here. Right. So you have to edit that stuff out. And then from there, of course, that made it instantly a TIFF. And then I go and I do the final edit and there's another TIFF. So I'm going from software to software for different results. And each time, if I were not saving this as TIFF, but more of a JPEG, I'd be losing data and I'd be creating a more chunky looking photo.
Now, it's important. I think we should take a step back for a second.
Let's do that.
So we've looked at 3 file formats so far: JPEG, RAW, and TIFF. Now, when we look at a RAW file, a RAW is the universal title that we stick on the file format that is created as uncompressed, unsquished down from the camera. Now, every camera manufacturer has its own RAW file. Nikon is the NEF, Canon CR2, Pentax is the PEF, maybe. Sony, I don't remember. And I know we briefly touched on that, but every manufacturer is going to have a different RAW file, but it actually goes one step further than that. And it's that every camera will have a different RAW file. So on the Canon side of things here, the 5D Mark II shoots a different RAW file than the 5D Mark III, which is different than the T5i, which is different than the 70D. They're all called CR2, but the way that they are created is just slightly different. So every model is slightly different. Every manufacturer is slightly different. So RAW is a title of an uncompressed format.
Right.
When we move from that, we get to JPEG. JPEG is compressed, meaning it is squished down. But it's squished down when we take the picture. But then if we open the picture, pops up on our screen, and we edit it and we save it, it squishes it again. And then we open that and resave it, it squishes it again. So every time we open and save the picture, we're squishing it.
If it's a JPEG.
As a JPEG, yes. So that means every time we open and edit a JPEG, we are losing just a tiny bit of detail. Now, we're not going to get into exactly how much detail you're losing. If you need a number, it's 15. But
42.
42, there we go. 42 is a good number.
Yes.
But every time you open and save a JPEG, you are compressing it, which means if you do all of your editing in JPEG and you open and close a JPEG 15, 20, 30 times, I have no idea why you'd open and close it that many times to edit the picture, the final result will be a little bit lower quality than the original.
Now, how would you see that? See, that's the thing, because you could take a low-res JPEG and put it on the web and not notice that it's bad.
Exactly. Usually you would notice either when you zoom into 100%, so get really, 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 really close, or you print it.
Right. And then when
depending on the size you print it, you'll see almost like a muddiness to it. The lines won't be as crisp. There'll be extra dots here or there. It won't look as
because there's bits being taken away.
Exactly.
You're removing bits, so you lose a smooth line and you get jagged edge.
Exactly. And when it comes to a TIFF file, which we're also looking at, a TIFF is just non-compressed, meaning it can be open and closed. And when it's closed, when it is saved, there's no squishing down happening, meaning that it is retaining all of its information and it will retain itself being as crisp as possible.
So why doesn't everybody just save as TIFFs instead of JPEG?
Some software can't.
Well, that's
you might not want to do it.
No, actually, it's very large file sizes.
That's the other thing,
right? So you're not going to upload a 20 megabyte file from a 10 megapixel photo. You're not going to upload that to Facebook. It's not going to happen.
Actually, I don't think Facebook will even accept a TIFF.
Hypothetically.
Yeah. Yes. Where you would use one, however, and we were looking at an example of that earlier, is if you get into printing. So if you're printing and for some reason your printing house didn't want your PSD, you could save it as a Photoshop document.
Okay, you said PSD. We haven't talked about that yet.
No, but if let's say the printing house didn't want that, or you weren't printing for yourself, you were sending it out, and you wanted to send them a really good quality picture, but not have to worry about squishing it down, you could use a TIFF.
In fact, using a TIFF for print is a standard thing. Standard formats for printing at home or at a dedicated photo lab is something generally from a TIFF. You can actually embed color space profiles, such as the the ITPC metadata for print. So it's definitely a great format for print. TIFF is much better than any other option, potentially.
Well, I'd say if you're sending out to print, if you're printing in your house, if you got a big photo printer, chances are you're probably printing from Photoshop or Lightroom anyway.
Which would be the RAW.
Exactly.
In
And all
my
the color
case.
spaces are in there. And when we talk about the ITTC, whatever profiles, we're looking at every paper is slightly different, every printer is slightly different. So that means that when you edit a picture and it prints, it'll be printed so it looks like it does on your monitor.
Right. Okay, now
I think you did a printing show earlier, and if you didn't, then we'll do one coming up.
we should do one coming up. I think
Because there's a lot about printing.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're gonna have to have a special guest on for that one because we need help with printing because I'm not the most savvy. I've got an 8x10 printer here. That's pretty much how I roll. There's lots of different things we can learn, but that's a different show. Now, before we go any further, I just want to remind the folks who are watching: if you have anything to add, if you want us to slow down, if you want us to recover something, talk about something again, not recover it like we're making a couch here. If you'd like us to talk about something again or slow it down, mention it. Use the Q&A. Tell us what you're thinking. Involve yourself in the conversation, and that'll help everything. But one of the things you said that was really interesting was that RAW isn't the same RAW for everything.
Exactly.
Nikon's RAW is different than Canon RAW. I had a situation where I borrowed the Nikon D750 when it first came out to go shoot Louis Blanche down in Toronto, and my Lightroom software and my Photoshop hadn't yet learned the raw language of this new camera. I shoot with a Nikon. I have a D700 and a D7100. I've had no problems editing my RAWs. I bring this camera. I'm shooting all night. I get home. I can't do anything with them. So frustrating. Another time, I think you were with me on the Toronto Zoo day trip.
Okay.
Help me on that one?
One or two of them, I think.
Yeah. So we're at the Toronto Zoo, and I had borrowed the new Nikon D300S. And I had used the Nikon D300. Yeah, right. Back a day. I'd used the D300 before. I had no problems. But I brought home all these pictures from the day trip from the zoo, and I couldn't do anything with them because the software hadn't learned the new RAW codec. So this is a problem you run into sometimes if you shoot RAW. If you get it too soon, if you buy a new camera, you have to wait until the software is released to the or the language, I guess you could say, is released to the software companies before you can do anything with them.
And in some situations, if your software is sufficiently old enough, it won't be updated.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like a passive-aggressive way of a software company telling you that your version of Photoshop Elements 5 from 8 years ago probably needs to be updated. Mm-hmm. They won't update it far enough back. And the other thing we run into with RAW is if you're on a Mac, Apple computer, you really don't have, I don't know if I need to specify that one. You really don't have an issue with RAW. Usually you can see the picture on your desktop. You can click on it and hit spacebar and it pops up a picture.
A preview. Some Windows computers will have no idea what you're looking at. And the only way to view it will be to actually open it in editing software. Mm-hmm. So if you shoot RAW and you can't view the picture without going in through software, it would be not the funnest thing. So what's been done is a different format has been around called DNG. Yep. Which is Adobe Digital Negative. And basically what that means, it's a universal RAW format. So our friend Ross Chevalier, the photo video guy, when I first started editing and first started working with Ross, one of the things he suggested was I take all of my raw files and for longevity's sake, convert them all to DNG. So it doesn't matter what software comes out, I can work with that file. So it's kind of keeping you future friendly. So a DNG file is something that any editing software should be able to work with, as opposed to a RAW, which has all these different sub-languages, which can confuse older or different software. So there's where DNG comes into play. It's a RAW file. It's a digital negative that is more universally acceptable, but not many cameras shoot in DNG. No, and it is important to note that even though it's the Adobe Digital Negative, they designed it and created it to be universal. So unlike the GIF earlier, there's no licensing attached to it. I want some peanut butter. Yeah. I like GIF. Actually, I have a really interesting GIF I do want to share, so I'm just gonna actually pop this. I found it and I thought it was pretty funny, so we're gonna squirrel a little bit. And I'm gonna share a picture of the GIF that I found earlier. Okay, anyway, I'm sorry. Oh, this is how funny you are. I thought you were gonna pull up something from from Google Photos.
No, literally just a GIF.
So as an example, this right here, I'm going to do a quick screen share. And if Jennifer is watching right now, she's going to love this. So this is Dixie, my cat. I took a bunch of pictures of her sitting in the sun. And when you load pictures to Google Photos, it automatically takes pictures that were taken in sequence and merges them into a GIF file. So I can literally now download this as a GIF file, an animated GIF file. So I can post this in different places as a moving file. So this is one thing that's really cool about a GIF, is that it creates this little moving file.
You can almost think of a GIF as a series of still pictures that have been put together to make a movie.
Right.
Because that's really what they are. They're really tiny still pictures that have been smushed together to make a movie. And sometimes you'll see clips come out from TV shows and it'll be a GIF. It's just
like a meme.
Exactly. And it's just a short, repetitive clip without sound.
I had no idea what a meme was. I saw M-E-M-E and I was like, Mimi? What is that? It's like stupid stuff going on these days. Okay, before we go any further, I just want to go over to the Q&A. Ivan asks, what is your opinion on editing software that comes with a camera? I've never used it. So my opinion is I don't have one. But Phil, have you ever used the software that comes with a camera?
Not really. I think the closest I came was to use the... No, that wasn't even to edit. Actually,
I know
no,
my old Sony point and shoot had some software that I played with a little bit.
Yeah, some of them used to come with the Corel software. I know some older Nikons came with the Nikon Capture software, which was actually pretty cool because that was actually a pretty decent editing tool.
But hasn't that been discontinued?
That has. Some of them came with, like, I know Canons come with the Canon utility, which I think give you a very tiny amount of editing. But
actually, Canon utility is really good if you want to tether. It's much faster than tethering through Lightroom or other things.
And that's where I would use it. If I wanted to have my camera working connected to my computer, I wanted to run a time lapse or something of that sort from my computer and control my camera, then I would use the let's say built-in Canon utility or in the box Canon utility. But for the most part, for editing software, I'd probably be more inclined to go with something, even if I didn't want to buy software, go with something like Google's Picasa. Or if I wanted to buy software just to start, go with like a Photoshop Elements or get into an actual editing tool. The reasoning behind that is some of the editing softwares have really, once they come in the box, have odd ways of dealing with pictures. Usually they're either, if they're not created by the company itself, they're attached from another company. And they're usually not the best. No, they're probably differing.
There you go again. It's like you've been drinking the whiskey.
Just water today. Differing opinions, there we go, on, whether or not they're useful. Personally, I'd probably say if you're thinking about editing and don't want to buy software, I'd probably skip what comes in the box and start with, let's say, something like Google's Picasa. It's pretty decent. It's free. Gets the job done. Only edits JPEGs because it's free. But it does a pretty decent job of it. Mm-hmm. Once you get comfortable with that and you want to get into editing with a little bit more detail, take a look at, let's say, a Photoshop Elements and go in that direction.
Picasa is actually slowly disappearing.
Yes.
And our friend Maxine, who uses Picasa, loves it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing about Picasa is it kind of keeps things straightforward.
It does.
And Picasa is how you spell it, in case you're interested. I don't know how future-friendly it's going to be, though. I don't know how long it's going to stick around, if at all.
Well, it keeps everything in JPEG, so worst-case scenario, down the road, it disappears. You can always
work with your files.
Yeah, and you can always work with a Photoshop or something. I probably would, it'd be okay to use now, but for now, I'd probably more direct towards an actual editing software.
Actually, I was just going to mention what Blake just posted here. He says Darktable is open source Lightroom replacement. Mm-hmm. I didn't know about Darktable. Blake always knows about these really cool softwares. But GIMP is a decent Photoshop replacement. GIMP is GIMP. Yep. I've heard quite a bit about GIMP. Its interface is quite good. Or go Corel. Now, Corel is interesting to talk about because Corel is a Canadian company.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to use Corel Draw back when I used to do print ad for where I used to work at Nosh Audio. I used to make all their ads and so on, but I did it all in CorelDRAW. It was so easy. I loved it. And then, of course, when I went Mac, they didn't really have a Corel replacement, and I ended up having different stuff. I think you can use Corel on Mac now, but I'm not sure.
Probably. But it also comes down to usability. I'm not sure how many books, how many websites, how many YouTube videos are going to be out there for using Corel or things like Darktable or GIMP. Whereas, at least for the Photoshop side of things, there's going to be hundreds of YouTube videos, or I should say thousands of YouTube videos, hundreds of books. The base is there for learning, so everything's going to have a learning curve. It depends on, I think, partly how much you want to spend, and partly on what that back end support's like.
And it's also how serious you are. I don't want to say serious, because I mean, you could be a casual photographer and be very serious about getting good results. But it comes down to how important your edit is. For example, are you going to spend $12, $13 a month to get Lightroom or the Adobe Creative Photographer bundle where you have Lightroom and Photoshop? Is it worth it to you? Do you do enough editing? Do you want to do enough editing to really get the most out of your photos? If it is, I did that. I'm not big on monthly commitments as far as pay plans and so on goes, but I did it, and I jumped the gun, and you did as well. This is something that, as people who shoot a lot, we need this tool. This is the standard tool. He says, though, the software he's asking about is the Digital Photo Professional 4. Have you used that? No,
I've never used it.
I haven't used that either, Ivan. My suggestion for that software, because today's show is more about file formats than it is about software, would be
a software episode.
We should do a software episode. We're going to have Blake on and do that. I'm just saying it right now. Blake could actually be very good for that.
Sounds good.
But yeah, we should definitely do that. And we're going to do a whole separate show on that, Ivan, for you, my friend, because it's worth it. All right, let's get back into this. Oh, there was something else that I just wanted to talk about very quickly. Yeah, let's just get right back into this thing. Oh, that's what it was. We were talking about other software that uses in-camera, or other cameras, I should say, that use in-camera DNG. Pentax K1 is Tomlinson.
Okay.
They actually, in-camera, do DNG in the Pentax. Nice. They also do a PEF, which is the Pentax extended file format for RAW. And Blake says he is in on the software show. Awesome.
Good.
Cool. We haven't had Blake on the show in a really long time. He's always fun.
Now, with all of these softwares, there's a ton you can save in, and not all of them we're going to work with. Most people, I'd say, aren't going to save their pictures as a GIF. Most people probably aren't going to save their pictures as a PNG.
Ping.
You might ping, I guess, if you want to go that route. Ping. You might save it as a bitmap file or a BMP, which I think are technically two different things. But it depends on, I think it really depends on what you're doing with your pictures. If you're going to be posting your pictures online, chances are you're going to use let's say a JPEG. That way it's compressed. You're going to do your edits. You're going to save it. It's going to be smaller. Most software, when you are going to post online, you can actually export pictures for online, which means the pictures look really, really good on your screen, but there's absolutely nothing there.
It's a small file.
Exactly. So if you try to print it, it's going to look great on your screen, but as soon as you print it as anything larger than like a wallet print, it just looks terrible.
Which is actually why a lot of people like us in the community and so on, like for photo contests where you want to share photos, but you don't want the world to steal them.
Exactly.
That's a good way to go.
Yeah, because it'll make a good desktop background, but you're not going to print it and put it on your wall because it's not going to look that good. Now.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
A downfall to exporting for web, or in Photoshop exporting for web and devices, is usually it also strips out the EXIF data. Right. There might be an option for keeping it in. I'm not sure if there is. I'm going to be honest, I haven't exported from the new version of Photoshop yet. And so if there isn't a way, then you might notice that if you post your pictures online for the Wednesday night, let's say fireworks challenge, there might not be any information there, and that could be if you're exporting it for web and devices.
So this is the EXIF information, aperture, shutter speed, ISO. We draw this, we look at this information sometimes when we do our reviews, which kind of confirms how we're thinking the photos were made, or gives us some insight into what was done. So keeping EXIF information intact is actually pretty important for some conditions.
Yeah.
Now, Phil, what is a PSD?
Well, that'd be your Photoshop document.
Yeah, so what's different about that?
Well, in my understanding, a Photoshop document is something that is going to be proprietary to Photoshop itself. It would allow you to save edits as you're working on it. So if you have in Photoshop, if you have a picture separated into layers, you can save it and keep all of those layers separate. The downfall that I find with a PSD, a Photoshop document, is that if you have a lot of layers open, it is going to be a massive file. Very, very, very large. Easily larger than the original picture was by usually a relation to how many layers or how much detail or how much editing you've done to the shot. The advantage is it allows you to save a picture and then start back editing it without any loss to the shot itself.
Which is a huge asset. Like there's a lot of folks. Let's look Don Komarechka for example. Take your shot. With Don's editing technique of snowflakes, he has 30, 40, 50, 60 layers that he'll work with. And if he saves all these as compressed photos, he can't go back if he notices something afterward and fix a little spot. So I would imagine that Don would probably save his photos as a PSD and then be able to go back 5 years from now and grab that photo, open it with all the layers intact and edit such a minute detail, which is good because Don is always getting new software and so on. So if new editing techniques come around that improve his workflow, he can go back and bring these back in and work on new workflow with that old PSD file.
Yeah. Now, the larger your PSD, the harder it is to work with, the more detail there is.
Which is why Don has NASA's computer.
Exactly. Well, it is. It's larger than my filing
cooling
cabinet.
And yeah, exactly.
Literally larger than my filing cabinet.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of detail, a lot of information you're working with. And that goes with anything. The more detail you're keeping with a picture, the larger that file is going to be.
Right.
And if we jump back all the way to the beginning, we get to that RAW versus JPEG. When you look at that, because you're not squishing a RAW down, it's taking up more space. Meaning it's taking up more space on your card, meaning that there's less pictures you're going to store on your card. Those less pictures you're going to store on your computer, on your backup drive.
Or more backup drives you have to buy.
Exactly. Because you should always back your pictures up. Having them just in one place, not a great idea. Having them in two places, better idea. Being slightly redundant and having one at the bank in a safety deposit box. Okay, that's one step too far, but that's okay.
Well, if your house
burns down, you're okay.
Yeah.
But I like to have faith that my house is not going to burn down.
No, we try and keep the burning down of houses to a minimum. Blake says, also of note, PSD has a file size limit of 2 gigabytes.
It is still a huge file, though. 2 gigabytes is
for one file.
2,000 megabytes. And when you think about it, your average, I'm going to call it, my average RAW file out of my camera is somewhere in the realm of 25 to 35 megabytes. That's almost like 200 times the size or 100 times the size. It's massive.
Yeah, that's a huge file. But then again, you're talking 70 layers.
Yeah.
Right?
It's that picture over and over and over and over again.
With a very high resolution camera and all raw layers. So it could definitely add up. It could definitely add up. One thing to note, though, again, you did say it, but generally with a PSD file, only Photoshop software and other very, very rare software, manipulation software, can read it. So
it is super special.
Oh, PSB, a large document format, saves the day. So if you have to go bigger than 2 gigabytes, a PSB file format. This is what Michael was on our show last week, and he's coming up with this other format, which I didn't even talk about yet.
No.
I didn't even know about it.
It was in our notes, though, I swear.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I look up PSB files, and I find PSB speakers, loudspeakers. That's not what it is. Yeah. Professional standards board. All kinds of different things. So maybe we'll get Michael on the show to talk about the file formats as well someday. Oh, Blake was going to say it too. You guys, you computer guys know everything. That's awesome. That's why I love this show, because we learn something every single time. Blake says Corel, Capture One, GIMP, On One can all read PSDs.
Yeah. But your average computer by itself probably can't.
Right. iPhoto probably can't.
And now there's an important thing to note about iPhoto. Now, I'm not sure if iPhoto still does this. And maybe Blake, I'm pointing to over here because that's where he is on my screen. Maybe he can correct me if I am off. But my understanding with iPhoto is that if you save a picture as a if you have a RAW file and you import that RAW file into iPhoto, my understanding is that it immediately converts it over to a JPEG. Which I know that used to happen. I think there might have been a way around it, but I'm pretty sure that iPhoto used to auto-convert. I'm not sure if it still does, which means if you're shooting and editing in iPhoto, but you are shooting in RAW, you're losing something.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's not the case anymore, I'll get Blake to let me know.
So PSB is a file extension for an image file used by Adobe Photoshop. PSB files are a large document format similar to PSD file, but for larger image size. The largest image size supported by PSD file is 30,000 by 30,000 pixels.
Wow.
That's a pretty big file.
That's a huge file.
Apparently, PSD files or PSB files are larger than that.
Which makes sense now that he's saying that it crashed every computer he was working on in college.
Oh, joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wish I had Don's computer back then, he says. I wish I had Don's computer now.
Yeah.
That would be very nice. Honestly, I don't have the workflow that would warrant having a computer like what Don goes through. So,
no.
Yeah. And Blake
specialty.
says he honestly doesn't know as he doesn't use Mac, but I'm hoping it just creates thumbnails like Lightroom et al. All the other softwares.
But in which case, regardless, I don't know if I'd recommend using iPhoto for that much editing. It's an okay place to start if you're on a Mac. But
okay, so here's the thing. We've talked about file formats all day, which is great. I'll show. Yeah. That's the whole show. That's the point. But just to quickly squirrel aside for a second, when you use software like Lightroom, it's what they call non-destructive software.
Yes.
It works from your original file. It doesn't create a copy unless you tell it to, and therefore duplicating your files.
Mm-hmm.
So if you use iMovie or iPhoto, I should say, it always duplicates your files. Same as Picasa, same as GIMP. When you bring the photos in there, it keeps your photo where it was, but it copies it as well into a new folder that it can access. So you're doubling all your files on your computer, taking up useless space. Yeah. So this is why a lot of professionals stick to Lightroom, because that interface doesn't make a copy every single time you do it, and it only adds a small little bit of data instead of doubling your file sizes every time.
Well, and the other nice thing about Lightroom is it doesn't matter what you shoot. Now, Lightroom, I'm assuming Desk Dark, the one we mentioned earlier that I had no idea existed. Okay. I'm hoping it does the same thing. But because it does that, you can dump in RAWs or JPEGs, and they look like pictures. And if you need to edit 4 of them or you need to edit 10 of them at once, you can just highlight, edit all of them. Super easy.
Right. Which, your files and all that. It's so convenient.
Exactly. And if you're shooting
for dust removal.
Exactly.
Sensor dust removal. You have it in one photo. You just copy that cleanup problem that you fixed and then copy it to all the others or paste it to all the others.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Blake says the PSB files are not recognizable by Lightroom. Go figure. But if you open up a smart object in Photoshop, it opens the inner layer as a PSB.
Okay. And Blake's also saying Darktable and Capture One is the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Non-destructive. Now, we didn't even touch on Capture One, but we really should do a software.
Yeah, that's a different show.
Yeah.
We're kind of rolling it into this one, but we're pretty much out of time on this one. We've talked about all the formats already. For the most part, if anybody has any questions about other file formats, please, before we sign off the show tonight, go ahead and post them in the Q&A. And by the way, if you don't know where the Q&A is and you've been dying all show to say something to us but don't know where it is, if you hover your mouse over the window that you're watching us on, along the left side, these little panels open up, and one of them says Q&A. You click on that, and along the right side, you're able to type in all your questions or comments that you'd like. So we still have some time before we say goodnight, but I think we're going to move on past the file formats discussion. Is that cool with you, Phil?
I think so. We do have one thing. I've noticed the photo duplication with Picasa. It drives me nuts. It seems to copy exactly photos again with face recognition, and it can get a little out of hand.
Yeah, it's true.
And the PSPs are just computer destroying tanks.
That's what Michael says.
Pictures anymore.
Something that you can chug your computer to death with. Yeah. But yeah, it's true. What Jason was saying about the driving you nuts with all the copying. You know what? I don't know about you guys out there, but I shoot a lot of photos. I make photos, I would say on average, 100, 200 photos a day. Because I'm shooting, 2,000 photos at wrestling, and then bringing my camera with me to work. So I'm shooting a lot of pictures. I got a lot. It's 15 terabytes of backup drives, and I need more. Running out of space all the time. Online storage here and there. Getting into software that's going to duplicate all that, that's ridiculous. I would kill myself. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't kill myself. I'd be very upset.
Yeah, it would take a while.
All right, Phil, what's next? What's on the agenda? What are we talking about? What's happening?
After that, we're getting into our current challenge.
Our current challenge.
Wait, no, we skipped something. File formats, National Geographic.
Oh, yes. This is interesting. We're talking about all these different file formats of compression and all these different things that our files do to our pictures. What does that relate to National Geographic? So apparently National Geographic editor-in-chief Susan Goldberg said at National Geographic, it's never okay to alter a photo. We've made it part of our mission to ensure our photos are real. Now, I'm curious about the words that were used here, making sure our photos are real. That means true to its original thing, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me considering a camera doesn't have the same dynamic range as what we see. So that confuses me. But if you're taking a picture, do you just give them the raw?
I'm not sure. There might be like a certain list of what you can and can't do, kind of like journalistic pictures. You're not supposed to, at least from my understanding, you're not supposed to crop.
Yeah.
Not supposed to, add or remove. I know back when Obama first became president and there was the New Horizon oil spill, there was a big snafu about a picture that someone took of him and they cropped something out of it so he looked like he was really sad looking at the oil spill when he wasn't, and it was in response to something else happening. And so they could maybe have something like that, or saying that you can take the picture, but you're only allowed to adjust this, this, and this, and only within a set realm. I'd be really curious what it means, behind that, because you look at a National Geographic picture, and I'm hard pressed to believe that some of those pictures came straight out of camera.
Well, I mean, there have been big kerfuffles. Steve McCurry, the gentleman that shot the infamous photo of the Afghan girl with the brilliant eyes. He's under scrutiny right now because apparently he's done some digital alteration to some of his images, and the world is flipping out on this guy. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I mean, Steve McCurry is extremely well respected. He's one of Ross, our good friend Ross Chevalier, the photo video guy. He's one of his favorite photographers, journalistic or not. So, I saw some photos where they had a bunch of African children kicking a soccer ball into water, where he actually edited out one of the people to make the number of people in the photo better balanced, because the rule of odds and so on. So just by doing that, he's under this big scrutiny and all this. Anyway, it's kind of weird that they say raw or real photos, because in my view, every photo is a real photo. It's art. Photography is art, but journalistic photography is different. So I guess there's that gray area.
Okay.
Well, Blake says you provide the JPEG, but must be able to provide the raw file at request.
Okay.
In fact, National Geographic has outright said no more raw files. You cannot shoot in raw.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Jason says adding a shark to a surfer photo. Yes. Yes. Although it's fun, technically you're not supposed to do it. Okay. Michael says, when you get caught manipulating unmanipulated photos, I'm not a photographer, I'm a storyteller. There you go. Yep. If you get caught manipulating unmanipulated photos, you just say, I'm not a photographer, I'm a storyteller. There you go. Because we're all storytellers. That's the whole point. And Blake says he thinks you can do minor exposure adjustments, but no changing colors, removing things, etc., because that changes the intent. It all started way back when National Geographic was caught. There was photos of like a caravan going across the savannah with the pyramid behind it, and another pyramid was right beside it. And they got accused of taking those pyramids and putting them closer together so that they look better in the picture, which they actually did. So
okay.
This is why they started becoming extremely critical of all the images that they received. So yeah, one of the news outlets, that's what it was. It was not, it
like
was
Routers or something.
Yes, that's what it was. Routers.
However you pronounce it.
They said routers. Yeah, I don't know. They
Thompson
said
routers.
no bras. So that's what it
News
was.
of the
It wasn't
world.
National Geographic.
Sorry,
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, National Geographic says raw is okay. So
Okay.
I was off on that one. Thank you guys for.
Because they want to catch the raw emotion of the wild animals.
I see what you did there. All right. Anyway, it was just an interesting story. And when we're talking about file formats, it's like, where does it end? Where does it all end?
Yeah, and we can go on and on and on, and then eventually go less and less accurate. But we'll keep it as accurate as we are now.
Yes, we'll end with accuracy. Okay, so yes, the current photo challenge that we are working on right now is fireworks, and this is what I was a little bit. There's been lots of great fireworks photos, by the way, guys. Joe LeDuc, did you see Joe's photos of the focus blur? I've been teaching this focus blur technique, and I haven't seen anybody get it as well as Joe did. So kudos to you, Joseph LeDuc, on getting those fireworks photos the way you did. But what I was really thinking, and it was kind of good timing that we did it on Canada Day, was I want to see something where there's like a fight between a boyfriend and a girlfriend. There's fireworks.
Okay.
They have to literally be fireworks, you know? Or first kiss. You see a bride and a groom having their first kiss, and in their head, they're hearing fireworks. It's an implied thing. If you want to composite some fireworks into the background, you can do that too. I'm just saying, think outside the box, everybody. It doesn't have to just be fireworks. It could be anything relating to fireworks. You could get Pop Rocks from the store and put them in your mouth and take a picture of Pop Rocks. I don't know. I'm just being silly. You see what I'm saying, though?
Yeah.
I love when we issue a photo challenge and people go completely outside of the box.
Yes, and come up with things that are not even close to what we had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But that's good because it's just that much more interesting.
Push the limits. Dare to be different. I encourage everybody.
Of no return. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway.
Keep going.
Push it to the limit.
Oh, okay. All right. So why don't we end the show? Why don't you do it?
Okay. And so we're going to close off with our quote of the week. And it is a quote by Mr. Andy Warhol. And it is, the best thing about a picture is that it never changes, even when the people in it do.
So true. So true. You should see my 21st birthday. I had hair. It was awesome. I had rocker hair. And it doesn't change in that photo. My mother just posted pictures of me working at Friendly's restaurant in Vermont when I was 15 years old, and wearing my Friendly's restaurant polyester uniform. Thank God I changed, because that wasn't pretty. Michael says, "Oh, if you insist, I'll get a bride and groom's first kiss under fireworks with Pop Rocks." Yes.
Just throw the Pop Rocks in the air at them. It's like confetti.
Make sure they're wearing glasses.
My eye.
That's awesome. Okay, guys, so let's say goodnight. Thank you, Phil, for reading off the Andy Warhol quote. That was pretty cool. The best thing about a picture is that it never changes, even when the people in it do. Very cool. Good quote. Good quote.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching us tonight, this week. We hope to see you again next week. Next week is going to be a different kind of show. Next week is going to be a banter show. Mm-hmm. And we hope to have some fun guests on and talk about some crazy stuff. We'll let you all know what goes on as we get closer. Phil, thank you so much for being on this week, bud.
And thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And I'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Peace. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.